In today's video, I am going to be breaking down my top 5 defensive basketball plays. If you're coaching either a youth or high school or really any level of basketball team, this video is going to help you win a ton of games. So let's get down, let's check these out. So the first zone defense that I'm going to show you some different man options as well. But the first zone defense that we're going to run is the 2-1-2. Essentially, we're going to have player 1 guarding pretty much this area. And then we're going to have player 2 guarding this area. Player 3 is going to be guarding this massive area. And 4 would be guarding this massive area. Meanwhile, player 5 is going to be guarding this gigantic area. This is one of the ways that you could run a 2-1-2, and it's actually the way that some of the Asian FIBA teams run the 2-1-2 as well. Basically what happens is if there's a player with the ball at the point, player 5 is going to then turn into essentially the point defender and turn this essentially into a 3-2 style zone. If the ball gets swung over to, let's say, for example, the corner, that would be 3's man. Player 2 would be essentially guarding the reverse pass. Player 5 would then move down into the low post, and player 1 would be covering pretty close to the middle of the key, and player 4 would be covering the opposite post. This now turns the zone into a 2-3 zone. That's the idea behind a 2-1-2 that is ran this way, where player 5 covers the entire middle. If you have yourself a tall team, this can really stymie a lot of offenses because what will happen is you're going to have massive players up top, especially if you've got a whole line of 6-footers if you're coaching like an 8th or 9th grade team. This can really stress out the players at the point to essentially a point where now they have basically froze because a lot of younger teams may run a dribble drive offense. And if player 1 tries to dribble between that gap, he's now faced with 2 massive players with long arms who may not be able to pass around them. So this can be very useful, especially if you have a massive team all the way along. The second zone I'm going to show you is the 1-3-1, and while I personally may not be a massive fan of this zone, I do see massive benefits if you run it on and off throughout a game. So for example, you could actually set up as a 3-2 zone or into a 2-3 zone and move into this, and I find more success with the 1-3-1 if you were to do this. Because the teams will say, okay, they're running a zone, let's run our zone offense. Well, one of the ways that the zone offense works in most cases is they will get players in the high post. So for example, they may run a 4-out 1-in set where they essentially pass the ball to player 3 and overload the side, very similar to a triangle offense. Or they may move player 4 over to the high post, and that would be like a super overload. And that can be useful. However, if you're running a 1-3-1 and you moved into the 1-3-1, well then guess what? When they do this overload and player 1 goes down and player 4 moves up, you're going to have the trap on this side. You're going to be having player 2 move up. And now what you've essentially done is you've moved everyone into single coverage, very similar to a man-style defense, where now player 2 just has to watch the cutoff pass and then the backdoor cuts. And they're still in their zone. So if they were to swing this around and try to get shots on this side, it's really not going to work, because what will happen is because now player 4 can move over, player 3 can move in, he can kind of guard all 3 of these players, and of course at this point you can really shut down a lot of zone offenses quickly if you were to move into a 1-3-1 after showing a 2-3 or a 3-2 zone. Next is the triangle and 2, and you probably may have already been ticked off at least once in your life as a coach when the other team runs a triangle and 2. And I've had this ran against teams that I've played on and coached with, and it's just one of those things where you just have to get a third player in who can score. If you're coaching a team that doesn't have too many options on the offensive side, teams will tend to run this. And at that point, you just have to say, well, pick your poison or set up some screens. But either way, let's say, for example, player 1 and 2 are the ones that they are guarding man-to-man. Player 4 is guarding a zone, 5 is guarding a zone, and 3 is guarding a zone. Now, there is a way of running this that will help you be more successful. I'm going to show you that right now. Let's say, for example, they're trying to get player 2 open. Player 4 sets a screen on player 2. That's in player 5's zone. At that point, player 2 comes off that screen. If player 2 red cannot get past that player on the screen, he needs to scream switch, which then means that player 5 is going to be the one playing man-to-man defense, and player 2 will be then taking player 5's zone. That is how you can successfully run the triangle in 2 without having the men you're trying to cover get wide open from screens. And that's actually a strategy that the Toronto Raptors ran when they were running the box in 1 and the triangle in 2 against Steph Curry in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Now, before we go into my man strategy, I'm going to show you a zone that is absolutely amazing. And basically, I call this the unbeatable zone defense. It's basically a 1-4. It's a corner trap and a double in the post. And basically a very simplified version of it, because I sell it down in the description below, is everything from the free throw line and above is single coverage, and then everything from the free throw line and below is a double team. If the ball, for example, is in the corner, we're going to have a trap in the corner. If the ball is in the post, we're going to have a double in the post. If it's on the high post, it's in single coverage because that's above the free throw line. And this defense is absolutely amazing. It has won me 5 out of 6 seasons with a gold or silver medal as a coach. It's won championships around the world as well, from a lot of comments that I've been getting back from it. So make sure to go check it out down in the description below. And finally, my man-to-man defense that I like to run. At least with younger teams, I'll do the simplified version, and that is what I'm going to be breaking down here. When player 3 sets a screen for player 1, if both of these defenders are similar players, as in similar height and speed, they automatically switch. If they're not in the same height or speed category, I want player 1 to try to get his arm in between those two players to try to fight through that screen. If the ball, let's say, is on this wing, we will have player 4 slightly inside the key, and player 2 is going to be in the high post. Player 5 is going to be 1 pass away, so 1 big step away. Same as player 3 will be 1 big step away, and player 1 is going to be pressuring player 1 blue like there is no tomorrow. If, for example, we have player 1 drive to the basket, he gets past player 1, and we then want the opposite side, not ball side, we want the opposite side player to come out and try and take a charge. When this happens, I want player 2 to sink down. He should be looking at the play like this. He should always have his eye on his player and eye on the ball. And then I also want player 3 to sink down to the high post. This then allows us to take that charge, and player 1 should have the inability to pass out to player 4 or 2. Player 2 should be deep enough to be able to cut off the baseline drive from player 4. He should also be able to see both of these players. Player 3 should be watching his man and the ball, and player 5 over here should be sunk down just a bit below player 5 so that he can also see the ball as well as his man. That way, if that ball somehow finds its way out to player 4 blue, player 2 is already on him, player 3 is already here, and because player 4 cut off player 1, we want player 1 to go guard the point now with player 3. Now, yes, this could create some mismatches. I understand. However, most leagues that I play in, or I coach in, have a shot clock, and after they get a few passes through and they start to drive, the shot clock's already down to about 10 seconds. And within 10 seconds, I tell my team to switch everything. It doesn't matter, because then at that point, we can cut off the drive. That big player coming off of the screen with 10 seconds left, he's going to probably use about 1.5 seconds of that screen, which will then take him down to 8.5 seconds. And with 8.5 seconds left, he's going to be at the point where now, if he's a taller player and he's being guarded by a short player, his handles might not be all the way there, especially at the younger ages. And if it's a shorter player who has great handles and great speed, now has to go up against somebody who's taller maybe, and now he has to drive, because now he can't shoot maybe over top of that tall player. Now this is kind of a little bit more on the advanced side of man defense, and I may not run this with younger teams like a grade 6 or 7 or 8 team, but at the high school level, if I'm running a man-to-man defense majority of the time, this is how I would run it, because it really stymies a lot of offenses when we try to run it this way. And with those players really dropping off into the key when it comes to the help side defense, it really makes that man defense look like a zone, and the other team may be liable to actually just run a zone out by mistake, a zone offense by mistake. And because of that, I find it's very successful. I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, make sure to go check out my Unbeatable Basketball Defense book down in the description below, and I'll see you guys again next time.